No, wait, I actually lied there. So I do actually have a couple other things I want to talk about. So we talked about like tanks, defensive units, and stats and all that. But like for your campaign, like what templates are you going to need, and like which ones should you pick? And I'm just going to go, maybe load up one of these saves from like one of the campaigns that we did a let's play of. So let's go for the Union of Britain one. So here's like the ending of the Union of Britain campaign that we did. We'll just like look at those templates, right? So like infantry division with artillery, this is like your bog standard unit, and you need something to hold the line, right? Like you need something to put in your front line to stop the enemy from like just pushing through, taking your victory points, encircling units, and killing your stuff, right? And you're gonna need a defensive unit to do that. And infantry just does the trick for that, right? It's cheap. It's got the defense. It's got the org. The engineers can get its entrenchment, and it's got enough soft attack to fight back, right? It's like something like this is absolutely fine for just like holding your line. And again, if you're worried about the division cap, you can just double this from a 10-0 to a 20-0. And like kind of the usual alternative that's presented to this would be the 7-2. And this trades some base stats, and you're going to go for some soft attack in the form of the artillery, right? So in comparison, this unit's going to have much higher soft attack. I don't know about much higher, but it'll have higher soft attack, appreciably higher soft attack at any rate, and it's gonna have a lower manpower cost. It's also going to be depending on the type of artillery you're using. Like usually they're about the same industrial cost, but also you're going to have to import tungsten to build this line artillery. Like you're going to need considerably more artillery pieces to do this than just support artillery. So when would you use a 7-2 versus a 10-0? 7-2 would be is if you're concerned about manpower, or if you don't mind spending the extra research. Like again, if you're using a 7-2 template, your unit's going to be less effective if you don't take all these upgrades, or as opposed to like an infantry only template, which most of their stuff is in guns, which you're going to get anyways because you're always going to be using infantry. So if you can spare the research for artillery, then 7-2 starts to look more desirable. And also the 7-2, if you have tungsten that you're not already using for medium tanks, then that's fine. When you would not want to use a 7-2 is if you have no tungsten and you're research constrained, or you're one or the other, right? Like you don't want to be trading for tungsten and paying that civilian factory cost to build artillery to get a 7-2 unit that's not even going to be that much better than a 10-0. I think it's maybe not necessarily a fair comparison with these with this particular save, because as you saw there, I didn't invest anything in artillery, but I have like pretty high tier guns, so not really a fair comparison stat wise. But that's like the general idea, right? Is why pay the civilian factory tax for the tungsten and then pay the extra research and so on and so forth, right? Just to have a unit that does the same purpose as a 10-0. And the answer is like, if you have a manpower problem, you have tungsten, then maybe a couple researches isn't a big deal, right? But if you don't, then I would stay away from the 7-2 and the 14-4. I just go with the 10-0 and 20-0. This unit, again, it fulfills that basic requirement to hold the line. You're not going to be attacking with it. If you're attacking with it, it's because you're trying to pin something, you're trying to eliminate some encircled units, stop something from moving, move in through gaps and take terrain for free. But like you don't really want this to be in combat, on the offensive, because your breakthrough is bad. Your breakthrough is bad. You got no armor. You're gonna take a lot of damage attacking with this stuff. So what you definitely do not want to do is like take an army of this, line it up on the front line, draw a battle plan, and then try to battle plan through the enemy fortifications. Like that's just gonna cost you a bunch of guys and infantry equipment. That's a terrible idea. Don't do it. So every campaign is going to need that line holder, and this division is cost effective for that. And you could also like mix in artillery or anti-tank or anti-air as you need. Against the AI, you probably never ever want to get anti-tank. AI never builds tank units that are going to be strong enough to require you to respond with anti-tank. This is like a starting template we have. We never built it. We can probably just delete that. Not a big deal. Armor division here we used. We did 12-8, same as we saw before. And we didn't have any problems being pierced by the AI with this template, even though we are, like I said, the armor is a little bit low for this setup. But this was fine for us in this playthrough. And we went with signals, logistics. We were going overseas, and then we had the recon for the movement speed, and engineers for the the usual engineer things, especially for attacking forts, the amphibious, and artillery for cheap soft attack. So that's what we did there. And this is going to be like your offensive spearhead unit. The purpose of this unit is to break the lines so you can get through and get encirclements. Either this unit will do the encircling, or they just break through and you can, while they're being pinned by your infantry, you can walk more infantry around them. Or just drive your tanks around to get those encirclements. And then once they're encircled, you can use these guys to finish them off for cheap because they have such high breakthrough, they're going to take very little damage. They have armor and breakthrough, it's like perfectly fine to attack into huge amounts of enemy units with this stuff, and you'll take very little damage. Marine Division, this is something that we threw out there just to island top. Like again, this isn't a unit that's going to be fighting. This was just out there to go and grab some islands and maybe fight one garrison unit, right? That's it. It's not like a line combat unit. It's not going to be trying to, invade enemy capitals with ports on them and trying to bully off 4 or 5 units with amphibious invasion. It's just there to grab poorly defended islands, and it's cheap. It doesn't really matter too much if you lose something like this. This is just a spawn by event template. It's pretty shitty. You throw it in a garrison. This we use for occupation resistance, so you can have that kind of template. The switch template. So again, the idea behind this template is in order to smooth out your logistics, you would train a unit like this. It has 26,000 manpower, and when you have enough tanks to make an armored division, like instead of training an armored division, you train the switch division. It goes in the field, and when you have enough tanks to make a division, you switch this over. Like using the, like you go over, you pick a division. Right, then you go to the switch division template, and you switch it over to an armored unit, whichever one that you want. And what that does is it lets your tanks sit in stockpile, and they're not going to go into the, like if you start training something, it's going to want to pull equipment into this training inventory. And if you do it with the switch template, your tanks stay in stockpile. And that means if your units that are in the field fighting start taking damage, the tanks from stockpile will go and reinforce them and not get sucked into this unit where they're being held onto and not available for reinforcement. And you want your units in the field to be at full strength. Like using the switch template smooths that process out, like especially early game when your tanks are limited. And if you watch my campaigns, you can kind of see how I do that. This over here is like another 10-0, except it uses Insulindian manpower. We have Insulindia as a puppet, so we can make these templates, and because they're colonial, like Insulindia pays 70% of the manpower cost. So having puppets with large amounts of manpower will let you stretch your manpower by quite a bit more. But function-wise, these fulfill the same purpose as line holders. A tank unit, same deal. Units like this you deploy in Insulindia though, so sometimes it's like I have this tank unit over here. You can train those and you can deploy these in Insulindia, right? Whereas like a normal tank unit, we wouldn't be able to. So if you want to avoid having your tanks sail around all over the place and be subject to convoy raiding, then you can just use a colonial template and have them train and deploy right in the area where they're going to be fighting. Amtrak tanks, so like again, this is like a variant of the template we had before, but it's got Amtraks instead of motorized, and we use this for naval invasions. And like once we have the Amtrak tanks, we just leave them in there, and the unit overall is going to be harder, and it's going to have better terrain movement modifiers, and it's going to be better against rivers and so on and so forth. I think these ones over here are also Amtrak tanks, so. These will do the exact same job as the normal motorized, and then also have the added utility of being able to do naval invasions and fight over rivers. So if you have the Amtraks available in the Special Forces cap, just convert them over when you can afford it. Same unit. So like again, one normal, one colonial. And this thing over here is just again like another line holder template, but it's got the logistics in it for overseas. And like that's it. Like this is like basically all you really need to win like a normal campaign of Kaiserreich as a major power. You get your line holder, you get your spearhead, switch template to smooth out your logistics if you want to. This isn't necessary, but if you want to use that trick, you can do that. Garrison for occupation, and then your colonials for like the better deployment and manpower stretching. That's basically it. If you wanted to, you could do something like grab some of those motorized units and play around with those. You can have like special purpose divisions like this, like island hopping marine unit, or like you could do something like this that's pretty cheap to like try and do some of those meme cutoffs I was talking about. Uh, but yeah, that's it. So you don't really need much more than a line holder and a spearhead most of the time in single player. And again, like if you were playing multiplayer and you needed to counter someone's tanks or something, then maybe you want like an anti-armor unit or something like that, like a cheap anti-tank or something. But for single player, spearhead, line holder, that's all you need. And that's it. So just wanted to make that little addendum to talk about what templates you should build and whether or not you should use a 7 or 2 and what situations that would be useful in. So I'll just add that in there. And again, like for technology, like this is always going to be useful. You're always going to have infantry. You at least want Mech 1 if you're going to use motorized. Get the extra hardness for your tanks. Amtracs, I particularly like Amtracs. Some people don't think it's worth it. I like it. And then Marines, Mountaineers, you can use those if you need to have if you need to deal with those terrain types. You can use those. Mech, if you want to use Mech, you can get Mech. Support companies, we kind of already talked about when you'd want certain support companies. Armor, we kind of talked about already what kind of tanks you're going to want to get. Like ultimately, you want the modern tank, but whether you go heavy or medium to get there, like depends on the situation. Like we talked about earlier in the video. Artillery, like anti-air is probably the most useful thing on this page. Anti-air is also going to help you with your anti-air for your ships and your static anti-air. So like you get a lot with this technology. And it is conceivable, like if you don't have air superiority, maybe you want to throw these in your line holders and like prevent them from being cast out of their position. Artillery, like I said, artillery is like pretty shitty. It's not really necessary for holding the line, and it's not going to let you attack. Like it's not going to get you the breakthrough that a tank unit's going to get you. So instead of spending tungsten on artillery, I'd rather spend tungsten on medium tanks, or alternatively import chromium instead of tungsten and get heavy tanks. So I don't really rate artillery too highly. Like it's a little bit extra soft attack for your infantry unit on the defense, but infantry units are kind of like already okay at defense anyways. Like I don't really see the point of of getting these. You could do motorized artillery for your tank units to get some cheap soft attack, but you could also get self-propelled guns without having to do all this research, and that kind of also fulfills the same purpose. Plus, they're going to have better armor. So that's basically my thoughts on that. Is that artillery kind of sucks, and I wouldn't really bother with it. We already talked about double dipping with rocket artillery, and if you were going to play an infantry style, then superior firepower, integrated support, and then double dip on your support companies is very cost effective. Anti-tank is like completely worthless versus the AI. The AI will never build a unit that requires you to build anti-tank to respond to. Like your tanks are going to be way better than their tanks, and if they do show up with one of their scrub tank divisions, you can just send your tank division over to kill it. Complete waste of research. Never do it. And I think that's about it for land technology. So yeah, that's it. And goodbye for real this time. Lever Freeman signing out.